We begin, though, this morning in Ukraine and the fallout of those alleged atrocities in Bucha and other towns surrounding the capital of Kyiv.
Yeah, yesterday, Ukraine's President Zelenskyy visited some of those towns to survey the damage following the withdrawal of Russian forces. Zelenskyy again accused Russia of war crimes, saying Moscow was trying to cover up its actions. He is expected to address the UN Security Council later this morning. Russia has denied killing civilians, saying it will provide what it calls factual evidence at today's UN meeting to prove that claim. But it seems unlikely to sway President Biden, who again called President Putin a war criminal.
You may remember I got criticized for calling Putin a war criminal. Well, the truth of the matter is so what happened in Bucha. This warrants him. He is a war criminal. This guy is brutal. And what's happening in Bucha is outrageous. And everyone's seen it. Up to Allah. No, I think it is a war crime.
NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez joins us now from the central Ukrainian city of Vinnytsia. Gabe, good morning. So yesterday, we saw President Zelenskyy tour Bucha. That's that town that we were just talking about. Those other towns all surrounding the capital of Kyiv. And just these totally disturbing images emerged of those alleged atrocities. What was his reaction to what he saw? What was that tour like for President Zelenskyy? And what is he expected to tell the UN Security Council today?
Well, Savannah and Vicky, good morning. The outrage is mounting here in Ukraine over those images, and President Zelenskyy has said that he believes that surrounding communities in and around Kyiv might actually have a higher death toll than Bucha when all is said and done. Authorities are still going through the damage there, trying to clear landmines, trying to find all of the bodies. That grim task still continues today. But as you mentioned, President Zelenskyy set to address the UN Security Council, and as he has been asking, he wants the West to do more sanctions, more weapons to Ukraine. Also, the U.S., France, and Britain are expected to present evidence of war crimes. But Vicky and Savannah, the question is, what will ultimately happen? Of course, because the UN Security Council, Russia and China have vetoes. So there's a lot of debate over, what will ultimately come of this. But again, President Zelenskyy is set to address the Security Council today.
Gabe, Ukraine's deputy prime minister says 7 humanitarian corridors will open today, most of them in the south and the east. But that is also where Russia's renewed focus appears to be militarily. So talk to us about how these evacuations are going, especially in Mariupol, where we've seen so much bombing and destruction.
Well, as you know, Vicky, Russian forces, as they pulled out of the north, they're now refocusing their efforts in the east and the south. That some, according to officials, are actually stopping off in Belarus to reposition themselves and, go further to the east and the south. In Mariupol, local officials there say, as we've been reporting, that more than 90% of the buildings there are damaged or destroyed. As you just said, humanitarian corridors have been able to evacuate several hundred people at a time over the past couple of days. But there's huge concern, really, across this country about what type of atrocities, will be found in Mariupol. Of course, it's a city roughly 10 times the size of Bucha, and it's been besieged, as we know, for several weeks. We've been speaking with those refugees coming out of that area, and there is a lot of anticipation that when it's all said and done, we'll see the same type of atrocities in Mariupol that we're now seeing in Bucha.
Yeah, Gabe, the reporting that you've been doing with people who have made it out of there, the videos that they've shared with you, I mean, it's just been horrible to watch. I know you also did spend time recently with some territorial defense volunteers, people who are volunteering in this fight. How was that? What's the mood like there in light of everything that's been happening? How are they doing? Are they confident in what's to come?
Well, again, we're in the town of Vinnytsia, and this is a several 100,000 population. It's in west central Ukraine, to the south of Kyiv. And, the residents here have been preparing for a fight. We, went to, and it seems like everybody in this town is coming together to really mount some sort of defense if the Russians make it this far. And while this town is far from the front lines, it has had some significant missile strikes. The civilian airport here was hit early on in the war. About a week ago, the country's Central Air Force Command in this area was also hit by a missile strike. And we spent some time with local local volunteers who are, again, trying to prepare some sort of defense for this town. Take a listen to one of them, what he had to say.
Before I understood that I could be more useful here than there, I've never held weapons in my arms, and I wouldn't be as useful as people who are specially trained. I want to live here with my friends. I want my children to be born here and to live in, and I don't want the atrocities that we can see in the east of Ukraine to come here.
And that was a young college student, actually, who was studying in Kyiv but came back home to Vinnytsia here. And he was there with other volunteers filling up sandbags and really preparing for this town if the fight were to come here. And he is just one of many people in this town, civilians, that are now taking upon themselves to be ready. We saw volunteers making ammunition vests, flak jackets, camouflage, you know, to cover up certain monuments here. And this is just something we've been seeing all across Ukraine. This outrage over what's taking place, outrage at Vladimir Putin, and outrage over the latest atrocities that we're now seeing in Bucha to the north.
Absolutely.
Vicky?
All right. Gabe Gutierrez, thank you so much.
We appreciate it, Gabe. Thank you. Let's talk more about the situation in Ukraine with Jamil Jaffer. He is the founder and executive director of the National Security Institute. He is also the former associate White House counsel to President George W. Bush. Jamil, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said yesterday the U.S. is building a case for Russian war crimes with plans to announce new sanctions later this week. So what kinds of sanctions are still left? And talk about the process for actually prosecuting war crimes. It's not just up to the U.S. to hold Russia accountable.
That's exactly right, Vicky. Well, in terms of sanctions, Emmanuel Macron has indicated that there may be new additional oil and gas sanctions coming. The administration has a lot of options to go with, including sanctions against Gazprom Bank and the like. There still are a number of Russian financial and oil and gas entities that remain to be targeted, as well as a number of the more sort of senior or wealthy oligarchs they can go after individually, as well as their assets. We've seen some seizures of yachts and the like, including in Spain just yesterday with Victor Vekselberg. So we've seen some of that. In terms of the war crimes trials, you're exactly right, Vicky. The UN has got to set up a war crimes tribunal along the lines of Yugoslavia or Rwanda, or use the International Criminal Court to prosecute Russia. Of course, neither the U.S. nor Russia are members anymore of the International Criminal Court, so that complicates things. So it may require one of these separate tribunals. And then once you bring charges, the problem is you've got to get the people that are prosecuted. That's the real challenge in this case with Putin and his cronies.
Jamil, you've been supportive of a no-fly zone over Ukraine. You've said, yeah, we got to do this. The U.S., other NATO allies have said, no, this would lead to a direct confrontation with a nuclear-armed Russia. So the argument against a no-fly zone has always been, this is going to escalate the war even further. Why do you disagree with that?
Well, Vicky, I think three reasons. One, we're seeing exactly what's happening when we don't get involved, right? We're seeing increasing number of civilian deaths, increasing number of civilian buildings being targeted. We're hearing stories of rape, brutal execution-style killings, the like. It is horrific what's happening in Ukraine. And the fact of the matter is that Vladimir Putin respects power, and we have not shown that. We've shown the decision to send weapons and the like, but we haven't been willing to intervene. He sees that as weakness, and he sees that as a clear way to do what he wants to do and is doing what he wants to do in Ukraine. That's a real problem. With respect to the question of a potential World War III, of course, the challenge is if we are afraid to confront any nuclear power, capable of power, without force, that means China can go after Taiwan also. That's not a message the U.S. or our allies want to convey. We need to be able to confront force with force when things like this happen.
As things progress, the stance may change. Jamil, this morning, President Zelenskyy appeared to downplay a meeting with President Putin that was expected, but he does say that he expects peace talks to continue. We had been seeing some positive signals coming out of recent negotiations, but now you see what's happening out of Bucha. You just spoke to it, the atrocities there. Zelenskyy saw this all in person. Do you still see a diplomatic path out of this war?
Look, I think at the end of the day, Vicky, there has to be a diplomatic path. The question is, when will Vladimir Putin really be willing to negotiate an end to this conflict? At the current time, he's got very limited reasons to negotiate an end, even though he's had challenges getting to Kyiv and he's refocused on the east. That's where he always wanted to be. He wanted to take the eastern provinces. He wants Odessa, that port city in the south. He still has the ability to get all those things and negotiate an end. But how does he get there? He's got to harm the Ukrainian people, try to break their will, lay siege to their cities. That's exactly what he's doing So unfortunately, Vicky, for negotiated to come, this is likely to get much worse before it gets better.
Well, that is not what we want to hear, but we really do appreciate your insight and perspective this morning, Jamil Jaffer. Thank you so much.
And now, as more disturbing details emerge from the ground in Ukraine, countless people are working to get in touch with family members they've been separated from. Last month, we talked to Zoya Chichulina. She's a mother of 3. There's her family. And her family has been split up because of the war into 3 different locations. She's back with us this morning, I believe, from Budapest, where I think she's made it to at this point. Zoya, thank you again for taking the time to be with us. And we know you're with your 2 youngest children in Hungary. First, how are you 3 doing right now? And has anything changed since the last time we spoke with you?
Hello, friends. We are moving into remote family mode. We learn how to live in this mode. We still try and make our best to stay in touch, to use WhatsApp or Skype, to talk every day, just to hear the voice, to talk about ordinary things, school, lessons, movie, just to feel like a family together, but being virtually. It's hard, but it is the only way to stay together.
So a remote family mode is how you just put that. I mean, that sounds like something that you hear about throughout the pandemic, remote working, that type of thing. But remote family mode is just, it's so heartbreaking to hear. Now, I know the last time we talked to you, your husband and oldest son, they were still in Ukraine, one in Lviv, one volunteering. How are they doing now? It sounds like you have been in touch with them via WhatsApp. What are they telling you?
My husband is a military, so he's on the front line. He's defending our country. And my son, I am very proud because they continue to work, which means to pay taxes to the government, to the country, to use this money for rebuilding and supporting army now, as well as together with friends, they make some volunteering, as many people. So, people try to do their best from whatever location and try to do what they can and their skills which they have in order to help.
Absolutely. And have you heard anything from your husband, who's actually on the front lines? What's that been like?
We don't talk about those things. I'm a wife. I need to support him. So I just try to bring a little bit of light during our conversations.
Oh, absolutely. That makes sense. And how are your 2 youngest doing? I mean, adjusting to whatever this is, whatever you call it, some type of new normal in Hungary now, away from home. How have they been?
They are going to school, which I'm happy about because they have some networking, some friends. But of course, especially in the evening, sometimes, when we speak and they tell, we want to go home, we want to meet our friends. So it's not easy for them. But again, I think it's very important to keep them engaged with friends here, with lessons, and huge respect to Ukrainian teachers who give lessons here and who also from Kiev and other cities make online teaching to get kids engaged and involved.
Absolutely. What's it been like to find these resources in Hungary, in a country that you didn't live in until just a few weeks ago? What's that been like?
We have here communities of Ukrainians as well as local people support. My friend who accommodated us supports a lot. So we try again to stay connected here.
Absolutely. And now I just want to ask you before we let you go, with the eyes of the world on Ukraine, especially with what we've just seen coming around out of the cities surrounding Kyiv, those communities, what do you think the international community needs to know? What do you want people to hear? What do you want people to see? What do you want people to remember?
Just 2 things. First is to stop continuing double standards. Double standards in terms of not following values of the businesses about doing what's right and still having business in Russia, and double standards of governments telling that they are deeply concerned, but still we have ships with crude oil in European ports and still we have gas contracts are not broken. And last thing, it's not about nuclear weapon anymore. Those kids and women and civilians have been murdered, raped, and tortured not with nuclear weapon. It's humanity catastrophe, which I think world must finally stand with us.
Zoya Chichulina, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. We are thinking about you and your family. We'll continue to check in. We pray everybody stays safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We so appreciate her speaking out with us.
Absolutely.
On Capitol Hill, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is one step closer to being confirmed as the next Supreme Court justice and the first black woman to serve on the court. Senate Democrats, with the support of 3 Republicans, voted yesterday to move her nomination from the deadlocked Judiciary Committee to the floor of the Senate. This all clears a pathway for a confirmation vote as soon as this week. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell has been following all of these developments. She joins us now. Good morning, Leanne. Senate Democrats want this confirmation vote settled. They want it before the Easter recess. That's now easier now that 3 GOP senators have said they will vote for Ketanji Brown Jackson. Now, what is the timeline that we're looking at from here on out?
Good morning, Vicki. So the vote that they had to take yesterday was a precursor to what's going to be the final vote. We were waiting on a couple Republicans to decide if they were going to vote for Ketanji Brown Jackson, and 2 more did, Senator Mitt Romney and Senator Lisa Murkowski. So that brings the total number to 3 Republicans, as you mentioned, clearing the way for her confirmation process, or for her confirmation. Senator Murkowski, I just want to note, part of the reason she decided to come out in support of Ketanji Brown Jackson, despite her admitting that it could make it politically difficult for her to win re-election this year, is because she called the confirmation process awful, just awful, is what she told reporters. She says it's been completely bipartisan. It's completely broken, and she's really frustrated with it. And that's part of the reason she came out in support of Ketanji Brown Jackson. As far as the timing is concerned, there's a lot of steps the Senate normally has to go through in order to pass nominations. And so they're going to go through those steps, and it's going to take all week. The only question is, will the final vote be Thursday or Friday? But it has become clear now that she will be confirmed to the Supreme Court, Vicki.
So we are expecting that by as early as this week. Let's talk about the House, Leanne. It is expected to vote to recommend Peter Navarro and Dan Scavino to the DOJ for contempt of Congress. Our viewers remember, these are the 2 advisors to former President Trump. They refused to testify before the January 6th Select Committee. So where does that process stand?
Yeah, the House yesterday, they had a key hearing about it, which is the final step before it moves to the full House. And so the full House is expected to take up these 2 contempt recommendations this week. Now, after they vote for it, which it is expected to pass with the support of all Democrats or most Democrats, then it goes to the Department of Justice, and where the Department of Justice will decide if they are going to press charges on these 2. And so Peter Navarro and Dan Scavino are likely, after this vote, to join Mark Meadows and Steve Bannon, where the Justice Department is considering moving forward. Now, to remind viewers, Steve Bannon was already indicted. That process hasn't started for his trial yet. They're still waiting on Mark Meadows, but at the end of this week, there could be 2 more former Trump administration officials that have been referred to the Justice Department for criminal contempt. Vicki.
Leanne, quickly before I let you go, the January 6th committee under a lot of pressure now to wrap up this investigation before the midterm elections. Is the plan to go to public hearings? What does that look like?
The new schedule that committee members are saying is May. But Vicki, we have heard this over and over again, and that timeline keeps shifting. So nothing's been officially announced, but we're hearing May.
All right. Leanne Caldwell, thank you so much.
Now, former President Barack Obama will return to the White House today for the first time since leaving office in 2017. He's joining President Biden at an event promoting the achievements of the Affordable Care Act, which he signed into law back in 2010. NBC News White House correspondent Carol Lee joins us now. Carol, good morning. Good to have you with us. So this event comes at a time when the Biden administration has been facing some difficulties, low approval ratings, high inflation, of course, the handling of the situation in Ukraine. How important is an event like this that's touting something and with the support of the former president at a time like this? What are they hoping comes from this?
It's a great point, Savannah, because this is important for President Biden. If you just look at the basics, bless you, the President Biden is unpopular and President Obama, the former president, is very popular, particularly among Democrats. And so this comes at a time when the White House is struggling to get attention to its domestic agenda, where the president is struggling with voters. His poll numbers, as I mentioned, are very low. And so having the former president come over and serve as sort of a validator of what President Biden is doing is hugely significant. It's also going to be significant in the sense that these two haven't appeared together since last fall. President Obama has not been at the White House since leaving in 2017. So they're going to have this public display and also privately have lunch. And this is something strategically that Democrats and the White House hope is energizing, and that draws attention to things that perhaps President Biden has been unable to draw attention to on his own, namely his domestic agenda.
Yeah. Now, Carol, the White House has said that President Biden will also take more action today to build upon and strengthen the Affordable Care Act. Again, that's what this event is about in the first place. How's the White House planning to do that, and what sort of impact could that have for Americans?
Yeah, this is really the meat of this announcement. And so what the White House is saying is that they're going to change a federal regulation that would expand health care coverage to millions of families. So under the Affordable Care Act, basically, if you don't have health insurance, you can buy a plan through the exchange. But if you do have health insurance and your employer that costs you more than 10% or more of your monthly income, so that your premiums are 10% or more of your monthly income, then you can buy health insurance through the exchange. That does not apply currently to families. So if you have your spouse or your children on your health care plan, it's not factored into that 10%. What the president's announcing today is a change in federal regulations that will expand that to include families. So if you have your spouse or your children on your plan, it'll be factored into that 10%. That has to go through a regulation process, and if it's cleared, would begin in the beginning of January. So the president's going to announce that, and also an executive order that's really just has a lot less teeth. It's a directive to agencies to help expand coverage and strengthen coverage in Medicare. But the real meat of this announcement is that Affordable Care Act expansion, which the White House estimates would affect about 1 million families.
And Carol, let's also talk about what this means for President Obama. Is this any indication we could see him taking a more public role going forward, especially in light of midterm elections coming up?
Well, Democrats certainly hope that's the case. This is an election where Democrats are largely seen as going on the losing end of things. President Obama is very popular. The former First Lady, Michelle Obama, is very popular among Democrats, and she has said that the 2022 midterms, people need to vote like their democracy is on the line. How much they'll actually be involved, the former president, former First Lady, they haven't really figured that out yet, but they are going to be a presence on the campaign trail. And for Democrats, that's a real asset, because we've heard President Biden say, I'll campaign for you or against you, whatever works. He's not necessarily seen as a full asset for a lot of Democrats, but President Obama is a different story.
All right, Carol Lee, thank you so much.
And now taking a look at your morning news now weather. Powerful storms spawned at least one suspected tornado. They're now making their way through the southeast.
Bill Cairns is here with that. And what else is happening across the country? Hey, Bill.
Hey, good Tuesday morning, ladies. We are watching these storms moving now through Louisiana, Mississippi, into Alabama. In Dallas last night, right around 9 to 10 p.m. is when the worst of it rolled through the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We did have a tornado warning. You saw some lightning flashes. Look at this tremendous amounts of rainfall. And, The slogan's supposed to be turn around, don't drown, not plow through and hope that the road's not washed out. But that driver got lucky. Very fortunate. So let's get into these maps, because we do have a tornado watch that's out until 11 a.m. The area there outlined in pink, it does include the New Orleans region all the way back up into Jackson, Mississippi to Starkville. But the thunderstorms are just widespread. I've seen reports of hail-sized stones coming down anywhere from southern Alabama and southern Mississippi. So not only do you have a threat of tornadoes, but wind damage and large hail is very common with these storms in the last 12 hours. And then the rest of today, these storms will move through the south. That area of orange is of greatest risk, and maybe even a possibility of a strong tornado today, mostly concerned with the lower half of Alabama, Georgia, and the Panhandle region of Florida. The storms eventually head to Savannah and Charleston later on this evening, and Augusta. Of course, that's where they're going to try to play play the Masters as we go throughout Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The severe threat tomorrow will shift a little bit to the north. Now, this is a separate storm, so it's kind of crazy. This first storm is today in the south. It exits the coastal Carolinas later tonight, and then tomorrow we do it all over again. 30 million people at risk, including Atlanta to Birmingham to Chattanooga, that area of greatest risk, and a few tornadoes are possible. And then the last day of our severe weather will just be in eastern North Carolina early on Thursday, and then it will head off the coast, about 3 million people included in that. So for today's forecast, eventually rain will head into the northeast, but more or less through this evening. Windy and wild in the Rockies as a powerful spring weather pattern continues. Not a lot of snow with this one, and no one's complaining about that.
Yeah, that's true. No one, and certainly not you, Bill.
That's the only silver lining I could find.
We're ready for that warm weather. All right, Bill, thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.